Good afternoon to everyone. Really delighted to see all of you with us. Today's event is a joint event with APACMed, VentureBlick, and SGInnovate. And we want to thank SGInnovate for availing this place to us for us to host this event here today. So a little bit of introduction about APACMed. So APACMed is started by the multinational companies, the likes of J&J, Medtronic, Covidien back then, Abbott, Stryker, Bebron, and a few others. We've grown the membership to about 310 right now. And the intent for this association is to try to drive the harmonization and the convergence of policies and regulations. At the end of the day, we want to ensure that we are the voice for the industry, and we help the industry when it comes to maybe running making the business run easier. Yeah, so we are first of all a membership-based organization. We drive policy and regulatory work, and of course, last but not least, we organize activities and events like this to bring the ecosystem together. So we have a very strong startup community. About 52% of our membership are the startup community, and this is where we look at platforms like this to organize education, curriculum, to keep us updated on issues around regulations, IP, and specifically today fundraising. And it's not surprising that startups have always asked about have questions about fundraising. And today we have put together a very we have put together an expert panel that will take us through the 101s of fundraising. And we want to keep this session as dynamic as possible. And if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hands, and then we will bring a mic to you, for you to raise your questions. Yeah. So without further ado, I will introduce today's moderator, Chris Hardesty. So Chris Hardesty is the strategic advisor for APACMed, and he will take the lead on today's discussion. Over to you, Chris.
All right. Thanks a lot, Gabriel. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you here. Pretty full house. And I think one thing I always appreciate about Singapore is just the diversity of people who turn up to stuff like this. So I know we've got a mix of startups, some from around here, but some even from internationally. We've got investors, we've got corporates, we've got government representatives, again, locally and internationally. So I hope that enriches the conversation today. And I guess a lot of people are here because you want to be a unicorn, right? But I hate to tell you, unicorns are not actually real creatures. So it means if you want to be a unicorn, you got to be in it for the mystique and magic of the adventure that is ahead. And that's a little bit of what we'll talk about today. Of course, setting the context of all this is a little bit of a slowdown and change in the way economics and financing are going on around us. In addition to supporting APACMed, I run a medtech VC here in Singapore. And I mean, the number of times these days I'm in a conversation with somebody, and in the first 5 minutes, they ask me what my check size is. It's kind of a borderline intrusive, I would say, so maybe we can have some dialogue today about the best way to go about this in uncertain times. And really, I think that's the spirit for today. We're not here to solve everything about fundraising, but I hope find some pockets of excellence and maybe some golden nuggets that you can walk away with. The way we're going to do the program is we've got 3 speakers. Each one is going to take about 10 minutes just to share their journey and their learnings. And then what we'll do is we'll take immediately a few questions for each speaker. That way you can just engage straight away and not have to sit right there. And then after all 3 speakers are done too, we'll have a panel dialogue for the remaining time. So what I would say is please don't be shy. Make this time your time, because really, fundraising is a process that involves all the stakeholders working together. So please do engage with us and chime in. Hope that sounds good to everybody. And with that, I'll call up our first speaker, Mr. Chris Lee. He's the founder of VentureBlick, which he will explain, but he's also the ex-APAC president of some major organizations like Medtronic and Bayer, so comes with a lot of diverse industry experience. He's going to be talking to us about 3 things you don't want to know about fundraising. So I'm curious what that's all about. But yes, let's please give Chris a round of applause. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon. This is Chris Lee. And when I was asked to join this session, I was actually thinking, am I the right person to do this one? Because I'm actually quite new to this fundraising activities. Yeah, so I will share my own personal experience when it comes to fundraising, but I feel like looking at the other two presenters, Professor Ho and maybe Huang Xiaoning, maybe they are better experienced and they have a longer history and experience than myself, but I will still start to share my own because I was asked to give out a 10-minute long speech, right? But before that, I like to spend a few minutes describing what VentureBlick is about because my company is very new, established less than a year ago, probably more than 7-8 months now. So we're very new, based in Singapore. So I'll just share brief background of VentureBlick. That's my picture, but I'm glad that I didn't, wear a suit and tie because I was thinking what I should wear today. But anyway, so VentureBlick again was established about 8-9 months ago, headquartered in Singapore, but we claim to be a multinational company from the beginning. So despite us being a startup company of our own, we already have 7 locations globally, and we have 50 full-time employees working in all 6-7 locations worldwide. So perhaps, when I said I'm not sure whether I'm the right person to talk about the fundraising, but we seem to be better at spending money than doing the fundraising because we have already burned a lot of money on our own. But at least we are actually positioning ourselves as the one and only globally. We did a global check to see whether we can, back up the statement. We think we are the only company on a global basis exclusively focusing on healthcare to do a one-stop platform solution for funding, market validation, and also all other supporting the incubating activities as well. So what we're trying to do is we are matching healthcare early stage startup companies globally with the medical investors first, and then later professional and institutional investors, and later eventually general investors as well to get the funding they need. And so they can actually focus on the R&D development as well. So our one of the biggest advantage that we are claiming to have globally is that we do have 3 unique steps of the validation. First, demand verification by a bunch of medical experts. Not only myself, I spent 32 years in healthcare industries, ranging from a major multinational pharmaceutical company and medical device company, including the head of more than 10 countries and the region head in Asia Pacific and many other positions. So we do have extensive verification by medical expert within VentureBlick worldwide. After that, we also go for the clinical validation by today 700 medical and industry advisors worldwide. After that, we do ask them to invest their own money because in the healthcare industries, we do realize that the ultimate customers are medical doctors. So we are asking medical doctors to invest first before we ask the general investor to invest into the company that we are proposing. So as of today, we have closer to 800 advisors from 25 countries, and then we aim to recruit up to 3,000 advisors by the end of this year. And if you look at the multiple circles there in the middle, is called VentureBlick Advisor Network. We have a global reach, and we do have industry advisors that are covering all aspects of the expertise, medical reimbursement, regulatory, clinical, and everything else. And outer space, the circle, we do have medical advisors covering every possible therapy class that you are looking at. So we can actually ask cross-border, cross-country, international opinions on the acclaimed emerging medical technologies before we agree to work with them. Yeah. So with that, our first few months of the work actually led us to get 600 plus startup companies signing up from 70 countries, disclosing their pitch deck. Of course, we did sign the NDA with them. And then we actually listed them in our platform a few weeks ago. And then the first several weeks, we already attracted close to a $2 million funding for these companies. So these are the brief description of the 4 companies that we are working on right now. And we do have 1,000 plus registered investors on VB platform. And the ratio of that is about 70% of them are actually medical doctors, MD, the other 30% are industry-related advisors or investors who are used to deal with this kind of environment. And what we are offering right now is that we try to medically validate these companies globally and try to help them to raise fund they need, at the same time validating their ideas. But we are also about to launch the service to offer medical consulting services globally to validate these companies, regardless of whether these companies are coming into our platform or not. again, using global network of doctors, not just one country. And then we also plan to offer all kinds of marketing services, again, only for the healthcare startup companies. And eventually, we also plan to distribute some of these companies worldwide, including arranging the manufacturing of services as well. So we plan to offer full spectrum of the healthcare services from the inception of the company into the eventual distribution, sales, and marketing of the companies as well. Yeah. So that's about the brief description of VentureBlick. Because I tried to speak a little bit faster because I thought I was given 20 minutes, but Chris told me I have only 10 minutes. So I tried to speed up twice, increasing the speed of my talk. So now the main topic of today, again, I've been doing this only for several months. So again, I claim that I'm not the expert. And then these are a couple of pages that I tried to put up together to show 3 things that you should know or you don't want to know about the fundraising. These are probably very common sense that you guys probably all know. This is not a rocket science, but I've been doing that for the past probably good 3-4 months, trying to raise funds for VentureBlick itself, because we also, as a startup company, also does need to attract some funding. So as a matter of the fact, last night about 1 a.m., I flew back from Korea. So one of the objectives I went to Korea was to talk to potential investors who may want to invest into VentureBlick. So I talked to a bunch of them. This was probably my 5th trip since the inception of the company to attract some Korean investors, some institutions, some large healthcare company to invest in VentureBlick. And I also talked to many others in Singapore and China and everywhere else. So by now I have probably spoken to more than 50 potential investors who appear to be ready to invest into VentureBlick. But as of today, none of them actually invested in VentureBlick. That doesn't mean disappointing. Initial first few, I was very excited. I thought that they were prepared to invest, millions of dollars into VentureBlick. But after doing this pitch for 50 times, you don't actually get excited until you see the money in your bank account. Yeah. So I'm still trying. And then I also, while I was in Korea, I talked to a potential investor in the US as well, the Boston area. There's one company who contacted me out of blue, and then they learned from us. They wanted to, invest into VentureBlick as well. So, if that was the first company, I would be really excited, and I would be disclosing to my 50 employees that were ready to get like $20-30 million from this Boston-based company, but not yet, because this may lead into nothing. I don't know. But anyway, so you need to lower your expectation. You need to be realistic. But anyway, so these are the 3 things that I came up with. Again, nothing rocket science. You guys probably all know about these things, but raising money comes at a cost, because all these startup companies are very small. Most cases they have less than 10 employees, and many startup companies that I saw, although some are very promising in terms of the innovative technologies they claim, they only have 4, 5, 6 different people. So usually the founder or CEO or CFO spending significant time trying to get the funding. That will be the time they can utilize better to develop their own product. So this thing does cost money. So you need to be very careful. But more importantly, when you get the funding, how much money you get is actually more important, because don't overestimate or underestimate. You just need to get the funding at the right time, because the money is expensive. There's no free lunch. If somebody tried to be very nice to you, they usually have a hidden agenda. So you have to be very careful, and you need to determine exactly when you need money. In my case as well, when I started a company about a year ago, I had certain assumption how we want to progress the company without getting any external funding, because although using someone else's money is very nice because you don't have to burn your own money, but it comes with the cost, not just money. So when somebody is prepared to give you the money when they don't know, when there's a risk profile, they will start to dictate you what you do, how you progress your company, how you develop your course of the designing of the product and all that. So you need to wait to the right moment, but you don't wait till the last minute, because you have to worry about paying the salaries of employees. So there are operating costs that you have to do. So at VentureBlick, again, we have nearly 50 employees full-time. This is no secret that we are actually burning closer to $1 million per month that we're spending. This has been like that for the past 6 months. So we've been carefully selecting when will be the right time to get the money and how much money you get. So you have to wait to the right moment, not too early, not too late. So which is very difficult. So you are the only one who knows exactly when you need to get the money. So you need to, calculate that very carefully, how and when you do it. So you need to be mindful, especially when and how much you need, because don't over ask for it, don't under ask for it. I think you just need to get the right amount of money when you need it. Yeah. And then second thing, this is also obvious. not all capital are the same, because a different potential investor may ask for different things. They may ask for revaluation. They try to lower the valuation of your company. Sometimes they want some significant equity. Sometimes they ask for some other conditions, try to dictate you what you want to do and all that. So therefore, you have to look at it, what kind of conditions and the deals they are looking at before they extend their capital to you. So you have to be very careful here. And I've been also mindful about what I am willing to give up, because it is an easy temptation to get some kind of money very easily in exchange of a lot of equities and a lot of things at the beginning. But I've seen a lot of companies that are regretting it, giving up too much too early because they're so desperate of needing the money. So you also need to be, I begin to learn that you need to be very decisive in how you spend your money and how you control your expenses, because every time you deal with the people, because over the past 30 some years of my corporate career, I dealt with the tens of thousands of people. Right before I joined VentureBlick, even under my direct responsibility, I had more than 10,000 employees in 25 APAC countries. And a lot of times I had to restructure, I had to let people go against their wills. But it is a very difficult process, no matter how you do it, how often you do it. But this thing is more important for a startup company. You need to be very decisive. If you need to control your expenses, and if you have difficulties in getting the funding from external, you have to make a hard decision to let some of these people go. But you need to be flexible. Otherwise, it's very difficult. But again, more importantly, not all the capitals are the same. So you need to look at the conditions very carefully, what they offer and what you can give up, right? And lastly, although fundraising is very important, because all these people do need money, because I was thinking in my, closer to 50 plus, approaching 60 years of life, whenever I see some people having difficult times in life, I was always thinking, what if this person or me have all the money that I don't need to worry about? 99% of the problem that you're facing in life, if you have enough money, you can solve the problems. But there's a 1% that regardless of how much money you have, you cannot fix, right? So same thing with the fundraising. It's not like you have to do the fundraising all the time. There are many other creative ways to survive and prolong the life of your company. It depends on how you want to do it, how you want to look at your, fundamentals, and you go back to the beginning. What are the things that you're focusing on? What are your priorities and everything else? And when you get the funding, you want to get the funding from the people who can help you add value. Just because you're in the money very desperate, don't get the money with the bad conditions and bad deals. You really need to be careful, in accepting this sort of funding. What am I about to give up? And what am I going to do with it? Or can I just, survive without it? Is there any other way to go about it? So therefore, you need to be very careful again. And you need to be very creative about how you raise fund, because I've also learned since I decided to do this business about 9 months ago that you don't actually have to give up equity. You can maybe even give up the future revenue, some portion of the revenue in exchange of funding. And there are many other creative ways to get the funding instead of simply just giving up the huge portion of the equity, which you will be regretting it. Yeah. So these are the 3 basic things that I came up with. So in just 10 seconds, in summary, the key takeaway that I have, again, these are not rocket science. These are very common sense. Raise fund when you really need it. Yeah, at the right timing. And you need to get the funding from those people who understand, who can value you, who can respect you, not those people who want to invest just because I invest in your company. So I want to exit with the 5 times, 10 times. So therefore, some of these people are only interested in beautifying your company and make your company sexy, and they can get out. It doesn't really matter whether you survive or not, whether you get the approval or you get to be, prolong your company. They just want to exit. They want to get the right moment. So you shouldn't be getting the funding from those companies who don't understand the value of your company. And lastly, you need to have a long-term mindset, because if you're the founder, there are people that came to you, they trust you to work with you. So therefore, in my case, when I started this company, I was myself alone, but now I have 50 people in 7 different countries. Not everyone, but just about every one of them joined me, giving up whatever they were doing in a very well, received career to work with me. So I have my huge stress every single day. It's no longer myself. So I need to work with these 50 other people who join me, trust me to work with me. So it's not my own career giving up. It's myself times 50 times. So I became more careful. Exactly when I get the funding, how I get the funding, but I am looking at a long-term growth prospect of the company because many of our employees, not many, every one of them are much younger than me. Some are just younger than me, but many of them are much younger than me. They have a bright career ahead of them. So I feel like I owe them. So I no longer work for myself. I work for 50 other employees in 7 different locations. I want them to be successful. So I'm prepared to put myself all the way until VentureBlick as a company get to the multiple unicorn status, and that we have a triple listing aspiration within the shortest amount of time in Singapore, in China, in New York as well. Hopefully within the next 2 to 3 years. So along the way, I feel like I will be working with some of them, either help them to get the funding or try to get some investment from some of you. I can already see who's interested in me based on my 50 different pitches. So I'll be talking to some of you. So if I see myself approaching some of you, then you know that what I have in my mind. But, that's all I have to say. And then later, I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys may have. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and if you can just stay on stage for a minute here, we'll take a couple of questions actually, Chris. Yeah, you can just wait up here. I think a reminder of first principles is always good because a lot of startups I see that are kind of in a fundraising craze, and I ask them, well, why are you even fundraising to begin with? And they don't seem to always have a good answer to that, so they get in this zone. So thanks a lot for those reminders. Before the next speaker comes up, we'll just throw it out. If anybody has a couple of questions for Chris, if you don't mind, either about VentureBlick or maybe your journey or something. So anyone want to ask something? Don't be shy. Maybe I have a question for you then. You've you said been on this VentureBlick journey for about 9 months. What's been the most surprising aspect to you that you sort of weren't expecting in this whole process?
There isn't actually one thing. There are many things that are surprising me. The one thing for the fact that whenever I post the ad looking for people to join me, I was totally surprised that there's so many people globally expressing their wish to join me. And those of you who know me very well telling me, Chris, you're running a bunch of scam and the people will be disappointed. They don't disappoint too many people. But on the other hand, on a positive note, I was quite happy to see so many people want to join us. And I asked a few of my colleagues, why is that? Because VentureBlick is a small unknown companies, but we have no problem attracting people. If we place an ad in LinkedIn, for example, one position, within 24 hours, we easily get hundreds of applications globally. The reason for that was, it's not because I'm better than others, but because we are targeting the segment that we feel like we know. So you need to stay within your business, because after all, I spent 34 years within the healthcare industries after my university. And then not all, but most of our employees, if it's not close 100%, they all came from healthcare industry. So if you stay within your industry area of expertise, this is where you feel most comfortable. So even here, and also waiting for people to sit down, there's several people approached me already, although I have to admit I don't know them. Several of you already told me you guys work in the company that I worked before. So I know some of you, and then I begin to know at least 30-40% of you. I met you somewhere in the past. So as long as you stick to the area that you feel more comfortable, so that's not so surprising. But I'm very appreciative of those so many people that are showing interest in working with us. So I don't know whether this answers your question.
Great. Yeah, the talent aspect is always a big topic. Anybody want to ask anything? Okay. Thank you for asking the first question. Always the hard part.
You were working in Medtronic. So what's the trigger point, or why the timing you started your own business?
Yeah, actually, a lot of people ask me. Initially, I gave a very political answer, but now I actually signed the agreement with my former company called Medtronic, being one of the executives of top 10 out of 100,000. There's a limitation on how much I can disclose, but that 1 year has passed, so I can share anything that I want legally. So the truth was, somehow I was really fortunate enough to make myself to a global executive of a company called Bayer, a German company. Germans are, very dedicated and very disciplined and all that. But at least at that time, I made myself to the head of Asia Pacific, responsible for close to 10,000 people. I was only 38. I was told that I was the youngest Asian executive of a German company at that time, and I did that for nearly 10 years. I thought that I did better than others, and I was one time thinking I could be the global CEO, but somehow the global CEO position went to German guy, which I had nothing against the guy. And Medtronic, it's the U.S. largest medical company with 100,000 people with a $35 billion global revenue, as head of China, head of APAC, which is the one position, one level below global CEO. I did that very well, and I thought I did better than others. So I thought after doing that for years after years, maybe I could have a chance to become a global CEO. But when global CEO retired, they picked somebody else. So I thought that I cannot go. So I've been doing the head of APAC for 20 years. So I thought I put myself enough. So if company's not going to make me the global CEO of multinational, I should leave. I should do something on my own. So that's the reason I left a year ago. So I think that's a good enough reason. Yes.
One more question. Yeah, in the back there. Oh, okay, two more quickly. Yep. I think back right. Okay. Okay.
Hi, I'm Arvina. I'm from Colette, former Bayer as well as introduced. So just out of curiosity, any particular reason why choose Singapore to be the headquarters of VentureBlick?
Yeah, I chose Singapore not because of the weather. Obviously, I don't like, I like 4 seasons, but, Singapore government say that all the time because they have the right infrastructure. It's an English-speaking environment. It's a central location, and it's easy to, tap into the talent. I mean, I'm originally from South Korea. I would have easily set up a company in South Korea, perhaps with a better government incentive because of my connection or even Japan. But people in those countries, they don't speak English. VentureBlick meant to be a global operation. So if I wanted to do something in my home country, I would have preferred to stay with my previous company, enjoying huge benefit and making a lot of money. But, I think that the Singapore is naturally one of the, I don't know whether it's best location, it's probably one of the best locations when it comes to hosting a startup company. So for that obvious reason, I chose Singapore. Yeah.
Great. Maybe one more question, and then we'll go to the next speaker.
Hi, my name is Bea, PhD at NTU. I'm just curious because you went from having a lot of people, being responsible for like 10,000 people or more, and then now 50. But you put a lot of emphasis on these 50 people. And I'm just wondering how the change, like the pressure, added pressure that you have has changed in how you mentor these people and how you make decisions compared to the 10,000 or more.
Yeah, this one actually, I'm also going through a learning curve, which I'm actually truly enjoying myself better. Again, I'm not bragging, but when you work for a big multinational company in a senior role, there's so many people below you that do everything. So even for myself, if I join, only things that are $5 million or more. Anything below each project, I don't even bother to look at it. So if I go to a hospital, if I go to some government officers or somewhere, I only see the head of the hospital. I only see the Minister of Health, and they roll out the red carpet. And I remember I was sharing this with one of my colleagues. I was in Beijing last month. I went to this Beijing Medical University, which is one of the good schools, which I've been there before. The last time I went there 5 years ago, the head of the hospital was waiting with the picture of myself, welcome Chris Lee to hospital, and then they roll out the red carpet. I went to the hospital with some of my colleagues, this time just to meet with the one of the department head professor who had a hard time passing through the security guard. He was questioning me, I don't have an ID, who you are, and all that. And we went there and then we had to wait for him. And then in the middle of the meeting, he called me and left. And then I was left with some of a bunch of junior people. I have no clue who they are. I actually like that better because right now, instead of being superficial to say I claims that I have 10,000 people working for me, I don't know most of them, but now I have 50 people. I know every one of them. I interviewed almost all of them with the exception of 1 or 2. So I feel like I can be more personal, and I don't feel like I give them any pressure because at this point in time, although we burned a lot of money, getting closer to 8-figure, money that we have spent, but we didn't get any extra funding, so there's no pressure. So we're just working really hard and then sharing the same wish and the vision to get to the unicorn and to be listed in Singapore to start with. And then I think we are realizing our dream day by day, and then I think we will get there very soon. So those of you who failed to get the fundraising, you can always invest. You can invest into VentureBlick. Yeah? So we're really very big personally.
Well, thanks, Chris, for your openness and a lot of people-related questions, which is, I think, always very interesting. So please keep the questions coming, and later we'll have more panel opportunity. But next, I'd like to call up Lawrence, if you don't mind. So Lawrence is a renowned gastroenterologist, but he's here today as a clinician entrepreneur. He also won Singapore's President's Technology Award, so very prestigious. I think he calls himself a wounded soldier with respect to fundraising. So he's had a lot of battle scars along the way. But Lawrence, over to you, please. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So I think I'm going to just basically introduce myself. I think they listed me as a co-founder of 3 startup companies. Not because I'm experienced, but because I have higher chances of following the 3. So today I'm going to share with you some of my, obviously, the experiences with 3 kids. But bear in mind that I think every startup company has a different character. They are like different kids, different DNA, and so forth. So you do learn a lot through working with each of them. Essentially, when I was first asked to share with you on this kind of fundraising businesses and so forth, I think Chris as well as asked me to talk about this. I was actually truly a bit taken aback because I think obviously, as Chris said, I asked, well, I was serious that you want me to even talk, because truly I am a wounded soldier and still badly hurt, traumatized, so as to speak. So, but anyway, I'm prepared to obviously, in some ways, try to still encourage you, but don't bear too many wounds like me. So you can go to the battlefield like me, but hopefully I think there are certain things which you should not try. Okay, so I'm here today is to try to share with you how to minimize failures as well as reduce the wounds and injuries. So there are many things I like to share, but in the interest of time, I just wanted to kind of, I don't want to repeat what Chris already elegantly put to you, but mostly to focus on 2 things, because I think that timing is absolutely crucial. I've been through many of these things. In my early days, the first startup, we thought when we won the President's Award, that was the right time to spin off. In retrospect, it's still the right time. But the second startup probably wasn't exactly the right time. And the third one may not also be the right time. Because I think the ecosystem has evolved, the funding landscape has evolved. So for those people who are considering doing startups, you really have to time it correctly. So my first point is on startups, when is the right time? I think don't start a startup until you're ready. I think that's very important, because we have all the energies, enthusiasm. Sometimes when we have something successful, we thought, wow, we will venture out like all the other people. But bear in mind that now the government is starting to pour in funding. I think Singapore very different. You have many agencies now prepared to put in funding. However, I spoke to the highest person. I tried to convince this sort of people. I even wrote to the minister because Philip Yu and the rest asked me to talk to them. But I think the position is very clear. There are certain constraints in the system about funding. They basically say that don't start it too early. So let me explain why I kind of believe that what they say is probably correct. You see, I think people are familiar with this, all this yin and yang. And after you hear this, you can reflect and probably think that they may not be too harsh in what they say. So I think yin and yang is not oriental. By the way, the Roman, if you don't believe you search internet, they use this sign. So this yin and yang sign is based upon the solar. They actually mapped out the whole, I think the 4 seasons. You map out all the sun, you get this shit. Believe me. Okay, when the sun rises, you just map it out. You get this thing. So essentially, this is just to tell you, I think there is a balance in the system, the ecosystem. Okay. And if you don't understand this, sometimes in life you will feel extremely bitter and disappointed because that is life. Okay, the Newton's law tells us that for every action, there's equal and opposite reaction. So whenever you try to do something, you will always encounter opposing force or forces trying to stop you from doing. And that why is that so? Is because everyone is trying to balance the ecosystem. We want to preserve sort of thing. As Chris mentioned, okay, those people are very good in maintaining, do very well in any organization. Okay, those people who preserve peace and be nice to everyone, they will go up because they are not disturbing the ecosystem. Many of us who do sort of startups are not this sort of people, unfortunately. We want to disrupt. So this way, but we're working with them, bear in mind. So back to my initial thing, okay? So I think we can talk about the government funding agencies which are coming up with money, EDB, ESG, NHIC, whatever things you need them. So their status quo, no question, is KPIs. They're all bound by certain performance because they receive bonus and everything. So this is where the challenge is. If you try to go in as a private, they don't know how to deal with you. You are disturbing their ecosystem. You are disturbing their balance. So that's why you cannot be too angry with them. And you can't be too frustrated with them. You have to learn and yin and yang with them all the time, balance them. Okay, so that's why all investors are actually the same people. If you look at every investor, they have their own things. So basically, when you are doing startups, sometimes you are very caught up. But bear in mind that startups are very unstable. Okay, so you don't know what happened tomorrow. You may not even get money. So you are sending this very unstable force towards them, towards the funding people, towards the investor. Mind you get opposition. 50, I have encountered 100. So that's where you got a problem. So you need to learn how to behave. So this way, I think you need to know how to fit into your ecosystem. So I think that's where, so how is basically is to learn to catch their ecosystem, catch your equilibrium. So don't ask for too much. I think ask for enough to maintain, don't disturb them too much. So just go into the equilibrium, go into the balance. If they need you to earn so much money, then you just promise you can earn in 2 years and so forth. So that's where again, the same thing, I think startup don't start too early because the government funding is a lot nowadays. And you can try to work with them, but they will not work with the private people, they told me before. Secondly, is I think what's really in control. I think this is one of the questions Chris asked us to answer. No question. I think it's investors. Okay, the investor dictate your terms. That's no question. However, the question is always on, I think, who you send out to talk to the investors. So they invest in the people. They also send out CEOs, but some are okay, some are not okay. So eventually we all start to talk to them ourselves. We have no choice. So I think they invest in the person. Okay, they look at the person who is actually prepared to work hard and so forth. And this way, over time, I can't learn that we need to pick the correct CEOs very carefully. And that is a very important thing. And essentially, I just want to share with you, there are 2 types of CEOs. Over time, that's just a general term. One is called the non-startups, and the other one are the startup CEOs. What are non-startup? So non-startups, they know how to make a good thing better, okay? And most of them are in the MNCs, okay? So very different. And in China, it's called putting sort of make the picture a bit better. And most of the people, I think the big time CEOs are like this. They just know how to make it better and how to make it look good. In English, this is called icing on the cake. Okay. So it's already very nice. You just decorate a bit and look better, and then you score points and so forth. So these people, unfortunately, may not be the best people. Okay. So what you want is to hear all the stories of the big time CEOs like Alibaba, Jack Ma. So how did they start? They started really badly. Okay. So that's really, so you have to search for this, because I try to set up all the series in the old days and then very last series, and they just fail miserably. Okay. Because it's very different. I think the startup CEO you need to employ are those people who can sleep on the floor anytime. Okay. You can eat from instant noodles. Okay. If you hear stories like Jack Ma, Elon, they all went through this hard slot and they are all successful. These are the markers of unicorns. I think every single one of them went through this. If they can make it happen, and they can, surely they can do it. And I think a lot of investors look for these people. And they have, very importantly, as I mentioned before, financial discipline. Every cent counts. Okay, that's absolutely crucial. If you don't have this discipline, it's very hard to do startups. I learned. Okay, I find a lot of people are still strong. Masses now, believe me. That's why I realized that, checking their accounts were terrible. Okay, then the other thing is, I think crucial about startups is they should be business people. The startup CEOs, they should not be BD people. So what's the difference again? I can't learn over the time. Business people know what they want. They just go into the meeting, they don't waste time, they just tell you what they want and they close the deals. Whereas BD people, they kind of go and explore, meet different people and so forth. So that is where I think it's in between. But you need to know those people who are very sharp, they go in, they know exactly what to do, and those people who are starting to learn and so forth. So unfortunately, if you are struggling with money, you really need to find those people who already have a very strong grasp of what's happening, and they just go in and finish off the deals. So in other words, I think in fundraising, I think people are very important. Okay, so you rather have those who can offer charcoal in a snow than those who can only add flour to decorate something already perfect. I think that's very important, finding the right people. Finally, just very quickly, some things. So I think, when is a good time to start the startup? I think when you cannot use any more public funding, and how much? Yes, and I agree with Chris, just enough to the next. I call it equilibrium. And then how much equity? I think I'm actually learned from all these things. I'm not shy to give away a lot. Okay. And basically we need very strong partners. We have no choice most of the time. And I still believe that 1% of something is better than 100% nothing. And finally, as I mentioned before, investors and CEOs. Okay, last slide. Again, after going through this, these are the many no's, we will fail. Okay, we will still fail. So I think that's very important. If all else fail, what do we do? I just borrow the warfare. The kind of a warfare strategy is called Sun Tzu. Okay, and there are 36 different ways. Okay, 36. They teach you how to go through the warfare. So a lot of people are still using it. The last strategy is actually the best strategy, run. So all else fail, and this strategy has been used. Okay, that is I think, ingredient of warfare, and they still win in this strategy. So I think in startups, run means I'm not asking you all to avoid the thing. You still have to do it. But I think also learn to keep things as lean as possible. So if you need to turn off the engine, we call hibernation, okay? And that's not a bad thing because the timing is sometimes it's just not right. You just can't do it. So but you do not want to close it completely. I think there's a time when you know how to turn off the engine, rest it, and conserve you, because money is king, cash is king in a startup. And then, of course, why you have to do that is so that you don't buy. You rather just wait for the next turn, because I will be back. Okay. So no point really becoming a dead hero. Okay. So you got a chance always to turn back. I don't believe you do not have a chance. Okay. Just know when to turn on and turn off at the same at different times. So I think with that, thanks again for this invitation.
Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you so much. I suppose it's good you're a doctor for all the wounds that you've had over time. So it's good you're in that field. By the way, you call it icing on the cake, but I think actually what the term we use is putting lipstick on a pig, so that may be a more powerful message for the next one. Same thing, open it up, before we get to the last speaker. Would anybody like to ask something from Lawrence's experience? Yep, question there.
Hi, Lawrence. I'm Apurva from NUS. I'm a research fellow. And as early stage first time founders, right, we face a lot of hesitation in terms of coming from a technical background and trying to start a business. So how do we navigate or tackle such doubts when people say you don't have a business background? So how to navigate those
questions? So certainly, I think both of us are very good in something. And we have the passion. The passion is not enough, as we all know. You need the skill set, and also I think understanding of the ecosystem. Okay, now we've actually gone beyond. I think if you look at the evolution, I think in the early days when I first started, we talked about ideas to unmet needs to solution. That's kind of discovery of ideas, discovery of solutions. And then the next stage is applying the solution. All these are all passé. So now we are actually talking about how do you scale in the ecosystem, okay? And the skill set is actually not existent in many public institutions. Scaling. So that's where my honest answer is don't try to do it yourself. Find people who have gone through it. And the skill set is very tough. Scaling is actually very tough. Give you the example, you think, well, just a bit of regulation pathway is good enough, which they all teach you, not enough. So the sort of the manufacturing I thought is enough, not enough. Even then, you can't find a good CTO who can actually do prototyping, product development, whatever. You can't find it. Then after that, you have this trust, clinical trust regulation to bother you. Again, can't find people who can do it. That's not enough as well. Really not enough, because honestly, what you want is somebody who can actually adopt it, get the whole business to buy in, use your product, make a difference, and the journey is just so long. So my honest answer is actually work with as many partners as possible. Okay, keep having different things, but know where I think the so-called the potential, I think game stoppers or show stoppers are.
Thanks. Yep, one here.
I'm a founder of a biotech startup called Anchor Scientific. So we are also doing the fundraising many times, like you. So since we are in the early stage startup, so I hear that many times. We want to some of the ideas or tips you can share to eventually getting that investment that you need, because we're trying a lot of things and we are also very early stage. So what could you share on some tips?
So I think it depends on the sort of startups which you have. I think very early on, as I mentioned before, we try to use I think it is now they can't allow you but don't try to go into private, just a pseudo car entity and try to use the thing. Later on, I think Charlene is an angel kind of savior. We try, I think, use our own network. That's why I also wrote to her about to try to see what sort of angels they have. I think the earlier one angels, why we use them is because they don't do due diligence. Okay, you want these angels because they don't do due diligence. You have no time to do DD. And a lot of this venture, they don't, the bosses don't come down. Okay, the partners or right, they don't come down. They send all these people and they do humongous DD. You can't believe how much DD they use. And it's, you don't have the time. So that's where the angels, they trust you. They just say, well, you just show me the share thing. And after that, so I would say that use observe these people, not because I'm cleverer, it's because over time I've been talking to enough people, they trust me. So I got a group, a reserve group of so-called angels, which I can use for the next one and next one. And then also I think the angels, you need to make sure that I think there are people who can add value. Okay, in the sense that some will be early stage, you need a very strong governance people. I learned it. Okay, if your governance is actually bad, the rest will be bad from there on. Make sure you got a very nice structure. Your share structure is correct. Everything must be done. A lot of my problems now arise on restructuring because the initial structure was wrong. The agreements are barely signed. You cannot overturn it. So now you suffer because nobody else wants to come in, or rather very few people want to come in because you made the first mistake. So I think get somebody who is governance and so forth, and then also those people who can subsequently raise funds for you. So you don't want to be stuck, okay, initially, because we are never good. So I kind of have a few angels who firstly very good advisors who tells me all the agreement, so every single agreement. Somebody who is very good to raise funds in future can help you because you are and so forth. You want to get a very experienced person and so forth. And apart from the fact that then your CEO, your management team that can then focus on what they are good in, which is product development, that sort of thing. But your angel should be the one helping, because you know that once they put in money, they don't want their money, they don't want to lose their money. Then they'll help you. Okay. And also get one or two rich people. Because they will give you the behavior. Because the only thing I understand is sometimes money don't come in quick enough. You need somebody who can give you loan and so forth, convertible, whatever. They give you enough so that you can actually get it through to the next one. Because subsequent one will be Series A and B quite high. So those are the kind of tips for the early startups. Further than that, I think I know how to exit. That's my advice to you. We just get it to something and then get somebody else to take over. Okay.
All right, thanks. Okay, yeah, go quick one, then we'll transition here. Go ahead, Dan.
Hey, thank you, Lawrence. I'm Alexandra, PhD in Behavioral Science and Health. I'm curious to hear because both yourself and Chris have talked about timing quite a bit. And you also mentioned you kind of need to be ready. So I'm curious to hear, when do you know when to start? Like, when is the right time?
Yeah, I think from the institution, public institution, there are two things. I think in the old days, we always say, when you want to do a startup, it must be a reason, not because you're passionate. And the reason is because you need to shift the entire, you need to be able to shift the product into another equilibrium. You see, the university one is always about publication and everything. So if you feel that the time when you came up, the team is not able to do the job, the professor is not wanting to do this further because they want to publish or something, you just do not have the culture nor the skill set to do it. Then you have no choice but shift it because the product is so good. Then the second stage is to worry about the funding. You also want to kind of go out too soon and then have angels to believe you because the product value is very low. Okay, you want to de-risk for them. So that's where I say the government now, they are increasing. I see in many of this government committee, they are helping people to de-risk it. Okay. So when I think you finish de-risking and then you show at least minimum the product is working, it's scientific, or clinical value. That's the time when I think it's good enough for the investors to come in. Mind that your savings ultimately is the investor. You need to be able to help them to make money. That's all they want. Yeah.
All right, thank you. And again, we'll have some time later too to keep the dialogue going. So good segue into Xiaoning. So a chance to maybe rebuttal some of that if you'd like on what your views are. But Xiaoning is the chief angel at Angel Central, which is something she created and she'll talk about. She's been a venture builder. She's built and exited. So I think comes from some experience there. And I think it's going to talk a little bit about the valuation process and maybe more. So I think the clicker there. Yeah. Over to you, Xiaoning. Thanks.
Hello. Okay. So yeah, I probably is not the kind of angel that Lawrence is looking for because I do a lot of due diligence. Okay. Okay, so very quickly, just a very since I'm the third speaker, I just want to get a sense, is everybody still here? Okay. My it's my QR code is actually my personal name card, so you can scan it. Just very quickly about myself. I was a founder first. I started my business when I was 24 in year 2000. I worked on it for 14 years. I exited from Job Central in 2014. And actually just now I came early at 3 o'clock. Then I chatted with Chris and then I started flipping Facebook. And I noticed today actually it was actually the day that I walked out of the office of Job Central. Today was my last day of work in 2014. And then I was technically retired because the company was acquired by a car builder in 2012. So I did 2 years of work between me and me, who was actually my life partner, my husband as well. Then subsequently had 4 years to figure out what to do with ourselves. So in between, we did other startups. We did volunteer work and stuff. And that's why I joined quite a lot of nonprofits. I sit on the boards. And then actually starting, just now sharing one of the gentlemen for VentureBlick that I started doing angel investing in 2011. So which means my personal journey has been from 2011 to now almost 12 years of angel investing. So my full-time job right now is an investor. I spend 2 days a week on Angel Central's work. Angel Central was started actually as a community effort in 2017 because we felt that there were a lot of the founders here. It was actually the quality of founders were improving, but the quality of individuals investing in early stage PE was not high. And because that 4 years when I was trying to find myself, I was talking to a lot of founders and I realized a lot of their groups were from investors in the early stage who did not know how to invest. So you guys, you probably know that in 2015, our CFE, Singapore government is very forward looking, right? Every 10 years, we have an effort put together a committee to look forward for 50 years. So the Committee for Future Economy was in 2015, actually did a very good job bringing together a lot of policy change, guideline change that brought along the VC industries in Singapore. But they did not look at the angel space. So a lot of individuals were still investing well. And that's why in 2017, in order to occupy my time, I made my husband, Dashing, design an angel workshop. And so we started doing angel workshop under one of my fintech startups to share with fellow high net worth individuals how to do angel investing. So 2018, when the effort came to decent number, I decided to form a club around it. So directly on our twin Dashing, and we've done 24 investments since 2012, and then 22 indirect investments via Angel Central, which is a syndicated deal. So between my husband and me, and then we also have invested in 7 VC funds, our personal money about $9 million into this space. To really pay it forward, we realized that I can't invest in every single startup. Right now, because of the efforts here, we receive about 800 applications a year. However, personally, I do not invest more than 4 to 5 deals a year. So going back to due diligence, every deal, to invest in every deal, I look at almost 15 to 60 other deals. But because I'm full-time doing it now, So a lot of angels, maybe that's why Lawrence had the ideas. A lot of angels do not do due diligence, or we leverage on each other's experience and knowledge, because angel investing is very time consuming. So for individuals who are looking to invest in the early stage, sometimes when I talk to family officers, I will actually outright say that maybe you should consider investing in a VC rather than doing angel investing. Because if you're not prepared to invest the time, it's actually a very costly asset class that you will write off a lot. You have to write off a lot of investments. So for the individuals who are really thinking about going into early stage PE, it's not something you should take it lightly. Personally, out of my 46 investments, last night in order to prepare the updates, I had so far written off 10 investments. I have 9 investments that is doing very well. One of them, I would say 3 almost reaching, 1 definitely unicorn, 2 are decacorns now. So, but the thing is, it's 3 out of 46, and these 46 are out of efforts of looking at hundreds over the past few years. Okay, so right now under Angel Central, the idea is to increase the way that to alleviate the way angels invest. So we have about 130 members right now. Individuals, they pay a fee to join the platform. And under the platform, what we do is actually we share deal flows. We do a lot of education. And every year the startups will write into us. Out of the 800 applications, we will actually screen. We see about 200, interview 200 of them based on the deck and evaluations. Out of these 200 of them, about 40 to 45 were represented to the members, and not more, honestly, not more than 6 to 8 actually get syndicated. And the one key thing about our syndication is whenever we lead a syndicate, we do not allow the person leading the deal to say that I just want to syndicate, I want to broker. Every syndicate that is leading, every angel that is leading a syndicate in Angel Central, they have to put in money themselves. Okay. So one of the key things, actually also looking at the deck that Chris was asking us to answer, actually one thing that I have to say, I did not raise money for Job Central. To be very transparent, I started as a fresh grad back in 99, 2000. Seriously, who the hell are you? When you go to the VCs, VCs will give us at the time of the day. So we didn't raise any money. We actually funded the business using sales. I got to learn to sell very fast. Okay, I got to learn to sell very fast. I got to learn to sell based on concept. Okay, and it's something that I realize is a very unheard of idea in the past 5-10 years, because capital has been relatively easy and the ecosystem has been very different compared to the early 2000s. Mind you, I launched Jobs Central in March 2000. Nasdaq crashed in April 2000. Most people in finance industry would know what it means. So I actually want to answer that question. I thought I just took a slide off the education workshop that we run for angels. This slide actually, the content is about at least 2.5 hours long. But today I'm just using it to share because I want to highlight 2 things: people and execution. I think the 2 previous speakers have shared a lot about fundraising for the early stage companies. It's very much about the people, very much about what the people have executed to date. Real terms and context and opportunity are pretty much research-based conversation. But for investors, what we're looking to put in our money is a combination of what are the people about, what have they done to date's execution. It's very, I mean, I actually have founders who argue with me, you're angels, you're just supposed to invest based on idea. But the fact is, my money did not come from trees, right? Even trees need time to grow and nurture, right? The money don't come that easy. So the reason why we invest is because we believe in the founder, but the founder need to show to us why he or she deserves to be believed in. So the combination of skills, the experiences so far, the insights that they have, what have they learned from their space. So execution is something that I think Lawrence pointed out very clearly. Execution is not the same for different industries. So for myself, I'm sector agnostic. Medical spaces, I've invested in 2 medical devices and 1 is digital healthcare space. So the execution under medical device is very different from digital health. It's very different from PropTech. It's very different from SaaS. It's very different from marketplaces. So as an investor, I need to ask you the right question. So when I'm asking a question, when I'm interviewing the founders should use it to evaluate me as well. Do I really know what I'm talking about? And can you see yourself? I know you like my check, but can you see yourself working with me for the next 1 to 2 years? Okay, so it's the same thing that angels are trying to get out from the founders through the interviews. Okay. So those who are interested in this class, you can actually check out the Angel Central website. We have the workshops coming up every quarter. So some of the reminders to founders, I think one key thing that I think one of the, regardless of the industry that you are in, as a founder, especially the CEO, your job is to fundraise. Your job is to sell. Fundraising is a form of sales work. However, you do to use the strategy of rule of large numbers. I know all the founders use that. You have to have like 100 calls to get 2 appointments. But ideally, I mean, the one key thing about founders, we always talk about, you know what your customers need. So whenever you're going for pitching, fundraising, you should know the business model or the mindset of the VC or the angel who is across the table, because otherwise you cannot speak the lingo that they understand. So that's why I use the previous slide. This is always at the back of the mind. I know there are a lot of decks in the market talking about what you should have inside your pitching deck. Your pitching deck has to answer this triangle. Okay. Then what's your North Star? You start a startup to raise fund. So I used to come to this building a lot since 2016 because I was a VP for Entrepreneur First upstairs. It's very interesting that a lot of startups that come up from incubators, all that they're concerned about is fundraising. And when you ask them, why do you start? Why are you so stressed about fundraising? Because if I don't do this, I'm not going to get to that. So I say actually go down to the last point. Fundraising is just one way to finance your startup. Okay, granted, medical space, probably a lot trickier to do this, but founders, please always bear in mind, fundraising is not the only way of financing your business. That's why Lawrence mentioned about grants, working through the government. So you need to know the trick about working through government, but you need to know whether there are grants relevant for your space, how to get your POC, how to get your POV through ESG or whoever, right? There's so many agencies in the part. Okay, that's about it.
Thank you so much.
Oh, sorry, I got one last one.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
Angels in the room? Anyone?
It's raise their hand because they know they'll be bombarded.
Okay. One of my what I would really like to do is actually to understand the angel behaviors a lot better. So if you read the literatures in the market, there are actually very few Asian angel related studies. So started last year, I just started a survey, and this is actually year 2 for the survey. So I'm looking for I'm looking for 100 responses before we start analysis. Last year, that's actually the report from last year. We had 73 responses. If you're interested to read the report, just email us to get a copy of it. But if you know of people who are in your investing, please help me to get them to reply this survey so that we can have some data to understand the ecosystem better. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Then thanks for all you've done to build up this platform in the community. I couldn't agree more about the point about reverse due diligence too. I mean, it has to go both ways, right? By the way, I picked up a very interesting tip you mentioned subtly, but I don't know if everybody else picked up on, which is when you find someone who's not retirement age, but they call themselves retired after they've had some type of exit, they're probably a good candidate to be an investor, right? You said you retired, so that's one of
two kinds of angels as well, right? There's some angels who actually enjoy running along the founders, but there are some angels actually they're very passive. So especially because of syndicates, there's some angels that say, I just want to put my money in and I'm a one check angel. After I put in a check, don't bug me. Just tell me when you need me to sign documents. But is that the kind of angels that you want? Or is it the other kind of angels you want? So you got to know what you want. Right?
Perfect, thanks. Yeah. Maybe at this point I invite Lawrence and Chris back up and we'll just kind of shift into the pen mode here. But anybody want to ask something of Xiaoning, and then we can, you guys go ahead and come up and then we can elaborate off whatever is asked. So anybody have a question for Xiaoning, first of all? Yep, one in the back there. And then if you guys would like to elaborate off whatever's asked, we can just do like that.
Hi, just like to ask, right, for angels, do you have any recommendations when they would exit? And whether the angels would exit the investment? Because only when you exit, you actually get the return, right?
Yes, so that's what I meant by you need to understand the business model of the early stage investors. So one key thing for angels, when we are looking for exits, we're looking for multiples of returns. Because, so you know the VC's model, right? It's let's say I raise a 50 mil fund, my portfolio has between 25 to 30 companies. Out of 25 to 30, I know very well that for early stage, I'm not talking about Series B and beyond. I know very well that out of the 30, probably only 2 or 3 will survive. So these 2 or 3 need to give me the 30x return minimum to cover my whole fund in order to give 3x for my whole portfolio. Early stage angels, professional angels like Toshima myself, we actually use the same kind of mathematics.
So would you wait for it to hit 30x, then you exit, or even before that?
So that depends on the companies, and then different angels have different strategies. So for us, we are looking for the 20x. So when the one animation exited last year, technically it gave us about 3+ exit. So it's good. It didn't give me the 20x that I was looking for. So sometimes you have to exit because the company's already open. But ideally, I want to hold it to the end.
Oh, so therefore you are actually.
But then that's my philosophy.
There's actually a number that you're looking for.
Mathematically, there's always a number. Yeah. But for me, there's actually another thing that I'm looking for. I want to support a founder who is doing good. So right now, there's actually one category of angels who call themselves the impact angels. So this group of angels, typically, they are not looking for purely P&L bottom line. They are looking for double or triple bottom line. So their durations are always longer. They're looking for startups that can help with clean water, climate type basis, because they're concerned about how mankind can continue, right? So that group of the angels, they are not purely looking for returns. They're looking for returns plus positive outcome.
So would you see certain angels that have hit their, let's say 20x, but are impact angels, right? We want to actually work alongside with the companies even after they exited.
Yeah.
Would,
I mean,
right?
angels are individuals. Angels are not like funds where, they're controlled that way. Angels are individuals, and they will continue, they may choose to continue working with the companies if they want. So like the reason why I mean personally I still do this is because I enjoy working with the founders.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Before we jump to the next question, anything either of you would like to add on exiting related to the question there?
I think I think it's true that I think not just the agents, other investors also they do their own in their own. I don't know how many times the return on investments. Sometimes I find it high, but the real thing is these people also have other businesses. They tell me that just in conventional business, the big amount of business, and generally they already can get I think something like 40% return in 2 years or 3 years. And so when they try to benchmark, this brick and mortar return, and this way it becomes very challenging. Any series you expect, I think the 20 times is each time we say that it's about every series is about 2.5 times, and 4 times to 4 times. So it's that high the return every step you go. So it can be high, I would say that each time. Otherwise, it's not worth the effort. Meaning that I think we are looking to raise a fund. The initial one is so that you do not need too much your value. So each time, if you raise so much, you make sure that whatever is raised is about 20% of the value of the company, and you keep increasing each time. So there is a bit of a calculation, which obviously very good. I think on these things, I think nowadays, I think considered as academic or whatever entrepreneurs, and certainly I think we say we feel that we don't it's what it takes to take it all the way up, because it's becoming very complicated. So I think we look at exit how we exit. I think one is a totally different game. In terms of the exit, this is a challenge. I think in this it's either to the west or in the east is no exit in Singapore because of the market. It's too small. So you need to see which market you're going to. So importance, because when bigger technologies, you're looking at the markets in June, I think so I think there is a bit of a shift from the west to the east. And it's really, once you say, well, you're going to decide early on, because then if you don't think about the exit early, we will be able to free. And I would say that really because cash burn is actually to control. So that shows up a lot of even choose a one is going to settle that the entire series essentially.
Thanks. Covered a lot of ground there and more to dig in for sure. But anything to add, Chris? Or?
Yeah, if I say something about when is the right time to exit, I think as she said, I think it depends. Depends on your situation, because after all, it's your money. You know, if you need to gain 10 times, 5 times, 20 times, even 50 times, but you just need to make your own decisions because nobody's going to force you. But my only advice is, unlike Angel Central, which seem to be covering different industries, we're only focusing on healthcare industries cross-border, but healthcare industries, we do not recommend people to invest money into any of the companies that we are recommending, including VentureBlick. If you need the money next year, you have to wait for at least several years, especially if it's a pharmaceutical, probably good 5-10 years. So if you need the money tomorrow or even 2 years later, if you need that money to buy a car or expand your house or apartment, don't do it. So this is the reason we don't want to get in trouble too. So we only accept investment from what we call accredited investors. If somebody wants to invest, because I came across several people who approached me, told me that they're not accredited investor, but they like the concept of VentureBlick, they like to invest, we politely decline. We don't want to accept those money that they need money tomorrow. So you need to be patient, you need to wait for a while. And then I've heard some stories that if you want to invest into Google, Amazon 20 years ago, even $10,000 would be today. How many people can wait for 20 years? So these are unfair. So it's your own money. So in my opinion, although I may not know everything, but at least also be able to start your own company in healthcare. And if you want to invest into healthcare, you need to be prepared to wait for at least several years. Otherwise, I wouldn't recommend you to invest your money. You should better go to Marina Bay Sands and you should gamble. I think that's much better. Yeah. So we only encourage you to wait for at least a few years before you ask for any exit or any investment return. Otherwise, you shouldn't be investing into startup companies. Yeah.
I think the word patient capital means even something more in healthcare, right? So well said. Okay, we still have time for a few more questions. Anybody like to raise something in the panel? Yep. Okay. There you go.
Thank you. So in my experience, I've been, for the past let's say for about 9-10 months, we've been trying to raise money, and we've been talking to VCs. We've been talking to VCs who are sector agnostic. We are talking to VCs who may be in the health tech sector or the biotech sector, because we are in biotech. And so my question is more on how can we make the due diligence process for the VCs better, right? Because they'll have to do their own duty, and we provide things like we provide the patterns, we talked about what our tech is about, what we're trying to do. We have the business plan, we have the investment, all that. But there are times whereby the VCs come back and say we are still not confident, right? Maybe they have done their duty, right, in some ways, and we're not confident of entering into this space where we have no experience about, because usually when we're talking about health tech or biotech, it's always a new space, right? It's not really going to be the same old thing, right? Or else nobody's going to invest, and nobody's going to really think about that 30x return, right? Or the triple bottom line. So do you have any advice on how as startups we can do this process better so that our VCs can, or investors can do their duty, help their duty better?
Everybody?
Well, if I go to other panelists here, it's not so a basic skill, at least in my view, maybe it's slightly biased because that's the only industry I spend my whole life on. It's probably the most specialized industry, because the data of the medical skill probably is not something that somebody can learn overnight and pretend that they know. So this is why due diligence, using doctors globally to get their feedback and go skill expertise due diligence. I think someone like us can do that much better than VCs or anyone else, only if they have hundreds of doctors specializing in every field. So therefore, you need to go for an industry like yours, biotech. In addition to your opinion, because you are the founder who work for the company, your opinion is fine. It's you are very subjective. So therefore, you need to get opinions. So we cross border. I believe that condition will go out, and many VCs probably are more convinced than your own opinion. So that's all I can recommend. Yeah.
Yep.
So I think that I think this is if they are so I think majority are actually so-called fishing trips. So they do not seem they are interested. From experience, if they're interested, they would have to. So I think if they are actually interested, so I don't think it's your thing that one information is going to help you anymore. So I think generally it's always one of my experience. I'm still actually just go straight and talk to them. So I don't know whether you shall.
Maybe my response to you. So actually, just now you say that you already have some certification done. Are you able to commercialize? Commercialized. Yeah. Okay. I think maybe that's probably why they're saying that we're not confident, because even with the certification, from the investment's point of view, it's what does the market say about this product? What does the market's response tell me about this group of founders or this group of products? So the execution data to support that. One thing I actually want to add to is actually go to the sector agnostic fund. So you know how funds work, right? They always have a lifespan 7+3 or 7+1 plus 1+1. Biomedical, typically your gestation period is 7 to 15 years. So if the fund is capped at 7 years, even stretch it to the 10 years to exit before you have anything for them to exit. That's why the mathematics doesn't work out. So you need to find a fund life that can match your requirement.
That's correct. So we're talking about biotech. I agree with you when we are talking about biomed, right? Because you have to clinical trials, you have to do regulatory, you have to do, because I come from the medtech background. When we talk about biotech, what is mainly manufacturing, which is actually, that's possibly shortened. What's a little bit difficult is to explain the distinction between the two, because it just so happened that what we're doing straddles between the two, because it has government applications. However, there is also many other applications such as additives or materials and engineering, this kind of possibility, which does not need that 7-year gestation period. So this is what I'm trying to think of, like, how can we make VCs and understand much better than this? Because it's also a learning curve for us. Because I've been falling back on the retail background and talking blah, 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 right? And sometimes it doesn't work, right? So it is more on, do you have any experience to share on how, especially to sector agnostics investors, that maybe how do we teach them or educate them? I don't know.
Maybe an opportunity for a workshop so we can take this onward and do something else. But I think one of the messages from today, which is also being said here, is you got to be targeted, right? You got to subsegment the investor population and make sure that you're not wasting your time by targeting people that in the end will just take you on a fishing trip. So, it's not the easy answer, let's say exact, but I think that's part of the messaging coming back here is just try and be as targeted as you can so you don't waste your own time, right? So, but definitely something seems like further discussion is required. In the interest of time, I'll just take maybe one last question if anybody has. Oh, we got 2 hands up. Okay. Can you guys team up and combine your questions somehow? Maybe on the left since you didn't get to.
Yeah, thanks. You may hear from IPI. I have a very simple question, right? I noticed that all the panels today, you guys are actually entrepreneurs or were entrepreneurs. So my question is that, what do you think of like Singapore's startup ecosystem compared to, a lot of other places? I know, Chris, you have, you're multinational, right? So you invest in different locations, and same for, I guess, Xiaoning, right? So I'm just curious and like to hear your views. Yeah.
I'll give a short answer. Sorry. So I'll give you a short answer. Singapore ecosystem, I think, is probably one of the best in my view, because of the reason that I said Singapore being an international city, English speaking and all that. All people in Singapore when it comes to this ecosystem or business, country is unfortunately too small. It's got 5 million people when you look at it. Everyone is 75 million people, so the country itself is unfortunately too small. Other than that, it is probably one of the best structured, First of all, talked about government grants. I have to say, although the government also give out the grants, but the flexibilities and the variety of the grants that you can get from all kinds of government agencies, where the agencies probably one of the best thing is that the country is too small. So for that matter, I think they should open up the immigration to accept more people to live in Singapore. Because to finish my talk, people in Singapore told me that the country is too small, not enough to have a accept more people. But I came from South Korea, city of Seoul. The landmass of Seoul happened to be the same as Singapore, exactly same, almost identical. 20 million people. A lot of golf courses, a lot of parks that I see on these are just probably also in Singapore. 6 million people, so they can accept immigration. But Singapore is probably one of the best ones here.
So we're gonna strike a balance there. Any final comments from you about Singapore?
Okay, our news in health space is still challenging. I think it's entrepreneur. The other space will be better, but I think health is challenging. However, because I think health so I think it's not easy. So I think you need to which is starting off, you could shift it. So I think Jamie is I think it's a bit back to the right. So it's just so we can see that. So it's just possible. I think
Cool stuff going on here in eternity.
which is very politically correct because when SGI is building, I would say the talents, we definitely have the talents. Our difficulty, however, is not with the talents. I thought that a lot, regardless of space, our difficulty is our environment in our decision makers in a lot of large companies. These are the more senior people that do not have the risk-taking mindset. When founders are there to take big risk, our large corporations, the decision makers are not willing to take risk to support our young startups. That is actually why a lot of trials, our POCs are forever getting stuck. They go through rounds and rounds, even in the clinical trials. I mean, a lot of you know it. I mean, when I work with my EM companies or even some of my just getting trials, it's very difficult because our decision makers who are in their 50s and their 60s not willing to take the risk to spend that $10,000 budget with a startup. They'd rather go with a brand because they care about their KPI at the end of the year. So we need a lot of those mindsets to change. We don't, entrepreneurs are there. We need the entrepreneurs in the organization to take risk.
Yeah, Professor just said that the JV is not a bad thing. Maybe he didn't go through a messy divorce, but not that. But, since the topic today is to do a fundraising properly, my own advice to you, if I may say this as my own closing remark, is that you need to work with someone you can trust. When the presenter said who's in control, it says investors or the CEO. But as much as investor trusts you, if you don't trust the investors, don't take the money because that meant to be two-way. That not every monies are equal. Some monies are nasty, some monies are good. Because in attracting investor for VentureBlick, because we as a startup company also are accepting, investor to invest into VentureBlick. So we have people from different countries, some Singaporean, Malaysians, and Koreans. And I've seen, although VentureBlick is the same company, some investor who actually invest into VentureBlick ask me all kinds of questions, exit plan, this and that, endless questions. And then some investors don't even ask me a single question and they still invest. They need the agreement. That doesn't mean I know the person very well, but that means there's a fundamental trust between two of you. So you have to accept the investors that actually trust you as much as they trust you, and you have to trust them, and hopefully we don't run away. One of the recommendations from someone saying, you run away, but we should stay and then we can run together. Yes.
All right. Please join me. Showing appreciation for the panel here. Thank you. I think the statistics show there is unfortunately more of a supply of ideas and there is kind of demand to intake it. So that is the reality. But maybe you learned